We are surrounded by noise. There's sonic noise, the sound of whirling fans cooling down the heat sinks of our laptops. There's the media noise, the sea of bad information drowning out the information that we actually want. There's noise on the radio, there's static between signals, there's the background radiation of the Big Bang. And there's a history to noise. In the beginning, there was noise. And then there was the transistor and cybernetics, the taming of the wilderness of frenzied atoms as they diminished the human voice over telephone wires. Communication technologies were built to eradicate noise, and that effort has been remarkably successful in many ways. Information is being transmitted globally, nearly in real time. And the once desperately awaited delivery of information has actually become overwhelming. And to handle this overwhelming situation, we've turned to a new kind of filtration system, the algorithm, which can identify signals and amplify them for our benefit. Conceptual noise requires a conceptual filter. Today, this task has been given a name. To cope with the onslaught of artificial information, we turn our decisions over to artificial intelligence. And as I was typing this in Grammarly, the artificial intelligence system suggested that I rewrite this paragraph to make the audience feel more confident about AI's role in the future of information management. I rejected the suggestion. When I talk about noise, I want to be clear. At the heart of our current wave of AI-generated images is literally static. What in any other context would be a corrupted file. The machine has processed countless images, stripping information out in phases, and then it traces paths back to that original image, learning these patterns as it goes, making a map of coordinates. And when we type a prompt into the system, it generates this new image of noise. Millions of pixels set into random murmuration of color. And what starts with noise aims to organize that noise into an image. It scratches away the noise outside of those patterns and molds the noise within them, sculpting an image from this blend of direction and chance. Inevitably, the image arrives for some overlap in these coordinates. And suppose you generate thousands of these images with the same prompts. In that case, our minds begin to organize this noise and we see patterns ourselves. Patterns revealing that what seemed to be inspired and creative is sticking to a set of narrow biases and central tendencies. We've had a kind of political contestation about the organization of information for so long. The politics of who is represented and how, who is inside these systems and who is not. And it reflects who is organized and who does the organizing, who is sorted and who does the sorting. And before digital technologies failed us, we had the technology of politics to organize ourselves. And this question of the center is at the heart of AI. What resides safely at this center, and what dissolves in the places that we define when the focus hardens into something solid? What is missing from the central tendencies of these sorting machines? What other options, what other ways of being are we losing? What peripheries do we neglect? What's fluttering beyond the retreat to the data's center? It's easy to rest our eyes on settled concepts, the things we know, the predictions we trust. Definitions that comfort us. But outside, there's something different. There's something else. Something free that's dissolving. And that's the spirit of a blank page. My fear about AI is that we rely upon it to affirm and perpetuate these centers, and to assure ourselves that the center will survive this overwhelming entropy that's at the heart of real infrastructure. This infrastructure of memory and experience, of places and affections. What about the infrastructure of cracks, the infrastructure of fissures, the names we forget, the images we can't quite recall? Memory is an infrastructure, and it is susceptible to damage, and it dissolves too into increasingly smaller fragments. This fear about AI is that it reverses this process of information loss. It takes images that it has broken and repairs them into new images that have no connection to the source. There's pressure to fit this concept into a logical and rational agenda. It can definitely push biases of racism, heteronormativity, misogyny. But there's something about those things, too, that connects to this desire to resist change. As if power, closing itself off from the energy of a moving world, could prevent its own loss of the stability that comforts power and can comfort us as well. But security is not in opposition to entropy, and stasis is not life. Is the mission of technology truly to strengthen our grip on the present, or is it to facilitate a new imagination of the future? I don't ask if AI can liberate us. I ask, how might it constrain us? I see it not as predicting new and hopeful futures per se, but as setting plausible outcomes on possibility based on data about what has been done before. And I see a reluctance to acknowledge the vibrant notion of heat and the ways that things change. And such liveliness is too complex for any computer system to grasp. So we call that action noise, and we try to eradicate it in the name of control. A control that somehow has come to define technological progress.
We want to control the environment. We want to control the environment. Toxicity. We want to control the human proclivity. Steering. For braking and steering. We want to control the behavior of clicking finger. We want to control the behavior of clicking finger. To wrangle their brains into AdSense labels. To wrangle their brains into AdSense labels. We want to control the unpredictability of making music. We want to control the unpredictability of making music. We want to take it from the hands and make it with the instrument. Remove the noise of the musician to tailor what we don't want to listen. Remove the noise of the musician. We don't want to listen. Protect us from the challenge. Protect us from the challenge. Where of each other we think control? Where do we think control? Ought to end.
Nobody would want to romanticize a car crash. But where do we think control ought to end? Tech companies have defined progress as the development of tools that extend and expand the human control over whatever we've previously not controlled. My concern about artificial intelligence is that we use it to remove just a bit more of the wilderness from the world. But the quest to master the planet as gods, we actually lose sight of what is better about being human than being a god, which is we get to care about each other. And care arises from our shared sense of compassion and awareness of communal fragility. The ethos of Silicon Valley has long been that we should be free to ignore one another as solitary gods, that we can sever all ties, and that communal fragility will be strengthened or replaced by embracing a community through the use of wires and predictions that will forge new communities steered through individual freedom of expression and selfish libertarian game theory. My fear about AI is that it encodes this logic into our memories, that it takes an archive, the history of the communes that we live in, and degrades it, quite literally, stripping away the information contained in its images and music, writing, text, films, dance, and then rebuilds them in duty to the prompt of a single user to create a new vision, a vision rendered in too much shine, saturated colors, and the wrong numbers of fingers. I know, we'll get there. Eventually, we'll even control the AI-generated fingers. Don't you worry, Silicon Valley's gonna find a way. So let me ask this. What is it about artists that we needed to control? Diffusion models propose that an artist makes images, and that these images come from an archive stored in the artist's memory, and that the artist then brings about a hazy recollection, which is infused into the visual work as their own way of interpreting that image in their mind. The wilderness of the artist's mind is represented in the diffusion model as a single JPEG full of random pixels. And the artist's intent in the diffusion model is represented as a prompt typed into a window. And the process of an artist working through their ideas, well, that's represented as clusters of pixels being presented to an image recognition system, which confirms or rejects the shape of those pixels in accordance to the patterns, a library of visual references embedded into that prompt. Is this a human being? No, that's not a human being. Send it back. Try again. Is this a human being? Yes, this is the outline of a human being. Refine it and carry it to the next step. And so on, on track to become the process of production for billions of images emerging from the data sets that we've collected. Samples of human visual culture reduced to a data set of just 5 billion images posted to Reddit and DeviantArt. My fear about AI is that this is a clear cutting of our culture. To get out California, we paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Whether you believe AI is progress in the arts or represents a new medium or whatever, well, of course, that doesn't absolve us of asking questions. In fact, if AI is the future of art, it raises the stakes of good questions about what the hell we're actually going to do with it. And I'm telling you what we're afraid we're going to do with it, which is taming that wilderness of noise. What I'm afraid of is the mindset of control that aims to create a program, a set of instructions written for a machine that purports to do the work of remembering and breaking our hearts and building a fire in our guts. I don't care whether the machine is defined as creative or not. I don't want humans to surrender the work of memory and reckoning to a model of memory and reckoning that we've described to a computer. I want us to remember that there is no clear human center. I want us to stay messy. And I want artists to be the noise that makes the machine's work more difficult to do. I want other humans to remember that control is an illusion, and centering memory to an algorithmic average, it's not a power being afforded to us. It's a giving away of power to a machine built by venture capitalists who benefits when the wilderness is cleanly structured, insulated from entropy and deterioration, and integrated into the infrastructures of our memories. It removes the wilderness and replaces it with metaphors of order. When we use AI to brainstorm, there's a structural power that segments the blank page into statistically likely arrangements. But this mistakes the page for the object to be filled, rather than the storage device for the process of our thoughts. You have so many confines already that structure our imagination for what's possible in this world. The brief moments of staring at a space filled with empty structure, well, sometimes that feels like the last hope. The last hope we have for escaping the rigidity of things. A blank page requires organization. And what do we lose when we hand over the decisions for how we organize it? What if AI is not an escape? What if it's a reflection of what we need to escape from, which is a convenient and unconsidered assignment of categories and structures that give shape to our ideas? Where's the noise in this channel? How do we know when to daydream? An artist can use any tools they want. I never tell other artists what to do. Learned that the hard way. But I would like to say what I think that artists do. We transform what has been captured by metaphor and categorization. We reveal that those are just one metaphor of many, and one arrangement from an infinite range. And we can use AI to make photographs, or music, or films, or dance. But we could also use it to rethink our position to our tools, rethink the organization of information that lay at their heart. And we might ask what we can do with the power to arrange that data, not to imagine some AI future for its own sake, not because we should be afraid of a future, but because that's what we do with the tools. We find new ways to use them. And we point out what relationships and arrangements and alignments might be possible. It's not solely the work of the artists, it's the work of humankind. And art is only a reminder that the organization of our ideas, our relationships, our economies, and our technology is all just one arrangement, and that it is all open to be rearranged. Our minds are what maps disorder into order. We're told that AI is modeled on the human mind. However, the human mind is connected to the human body. And perhaps connected is not even the right word. The mind is of the body. There is no mind and body, they're the same thing. And we're told that the AI has some functions of the body, that it can see the world, that it can learn from what it sees. But the eye of the machine does not see the world as we do. It breaks the world apart. It's not an eye at all, is it?
Casting hazy recollection into non-existent eyes. Crafting hazy recollections into non-existent eyes. Our eyes are an interface to us. How do we get the pictures into the mind? Our eyes are an interface to Ace.
Generative AI is a filter of noise. The human body is a processor of signal, and one relies upon taking information about the world into our body.
And we know the pictures into the mind.
Shaded lines.
How do we get the pictures into the mind?
The other relies on carving the resemblance of information out of a sea of noise.
No, I don't. Isn't it? It's a filter shaped like our body. A filter shaped like our body. Filter in the shape of us. In the shape of us.
Generative AI is the I run in reverse.
Are we artists of memory, crafting hazy recollections into non-existent eyes? Crafting hazy recollections into non-existent eyes. I've heard that memory is reconstructed, not recall. I've heard that memory is reconstructed, not recalled. That we rewrite the past onto the mind. That we rewrite the past onto the mind. Rather than opening them up like files in a lost hard drive. Than opening them up like files in a lost hard drive.
What we see is often imagined through the lens of what stories we make up about the world. We assign the blur of bodies and the people and objects and experiences into categories. And we give them names, we give them weights according to their attributes. That's the experience and recall of memory, but it holds a different heft. The heaviness of vision is something else. It's an ache, perhaps. What gives the world this weight is its constant disappearance. An eye that generates endless new worlds is the opposite of this weight. It produces a stream of endless variation of experience, giving no weight to any specific moment or to any specific image. This AI's weight models possibilities without consequences, endless production without attachment. And this is not variety, it's the illusion of variety. The weight of what is human slows us, it steadies us. The lightness of AI is all speed, all production. It's an algorithmic spectacle, a distraction from the practice of memory, of the value of holding things close to us, because they will one day be out of sight. Every AI product is a product. It's the product these companies sell, but it's also the product of a specific way of thinking. It's a way of thinking that believes that the mind can exist in isolation from the embodied experience of this world. That data in storage is identical to memory. That sensation is supplemental to being. And that meaning can be separated from experience, from touch, from long name. Artificial intelligence is the product of a specific model of the human mind, a specific set of priorities. The model suggests that humans do things in similar ways that can be turned into steps, that they can be modeled and predicted. But if you talk to enough humans, you come to realize that there is no one human mind to model, that no one human way to do things or to solve problems exists. And perhaps one role for humans now is to contest these metaphors and transform assumptions into questions, and to resist the chance that metaphors for how machines work come to shape our understandings of ourselves. We might challenge the myths and metaphors that turn humans into machines, and we may come to define ourselves in a contrast to these metaphors and to complicate them, to find overlaps but also distinctions. And we might define such a relationship to artificial intelligence as adversarial, to tear these systems apart in order to make sense of them, in order to make space for other stories, to find ways in, to ask whose myths these are, and what if we thought about them in some other way. Sometimes these myths help us to make sense of things, but sometimes these myths can obscure certain truths. So it seems vital, as we grapple with this new arrangement, this newly emerging infrastructure of artificial intelligence, to consider it through the lens of as many myths, as many stories, and as many metaphors as we can. And when we shift the frames through which we study the world, we may find that some of the problems we have with these products stem from the way we explain them to ourselves. With artificial intelligence, we are awash in a sea of metaphors that make us rethink what it is to be human. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's an opportunity to decenter the human from the role as the sole decider of what matters on this planet. It's a mindset that has wreaked ecological and political havoc. Maybe we can interrogate the assumptions we make about our own world, our own role in the world, and practice empathy with non-human intelligences of all kinds. But it is worth pointing out that these data processing machines are still very human. The metaphors that define them can be human metaphors, and the systems that gave rise to it, they're human economics, human ideologies, human biases, and human data. We live between our models of the world and a world that is resistant to modeling. What we can model, we call signal, and that which resists being modeled, we call noise. And artificial intelligence is fundamentally a noise reduction technology. It's a technology that constrains the overwhelming number of decisions that the world presents to us. It's a model of a frightened mind. It's a mind that reduces and constrains the unknown into the predictable. And this model of the mind can sometimes keep creativity within a pre-selected range, aimed to limit the variety of its encounters. It can seek to sanitize the complexity of life beyond the borders and make the borders strong. It can seek to confine the noise within these borders, to define things clearly, and eradicate that which is not neatly aligned. And if so, we are modeling the mind of fear. Artificial intelligence is like us, but only imitating certain states of mind. And perhaps we should not aim to extend those moments into automated eternities that filter the world on our behalf. What happens if we accept the softness that surrounds the edges of our identities? What becomes of us when we remember that these edges are permeable, that the distance between us disappears when we examine it closely enough or from far enough away? What becomes of us when we acknowledge the vulnerability of being a human who will one day, inevitably, die? What is left of us when that data is gone and we find ourselves, once again, diffused into the noise from which we emerged? That is the difference between a human being and a machine. I doubt. Therefore, I think. And therefore, I am.
Thank you.